guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are getting messy, as you can see, and we are talking about tomatoes. As I mentioned in one of the videos, guys, since we had the shortages of tomatoes, I read numerous of articles where basically it said that a lot of people suddenly rushed to Amazon or whatever else and literally bought up a lot of tomato seeds, because I think everybody suddenly realized how volatile we are. If something suddenly is not available, then we suddenly decide to grow our own. And absolutely right, guys. I think we should be able to just generally make an effort and grow as much as possible. It's just because it's healthier, as we know anyway. So I've been growing tomatoes, guys, for, oh my God, I've been growing generally for about 10, 12 years. So I come up with a family where we had basically like a country house, so we always grown all sorts of produce, and of course including the tomatoes. And tomato has been one of my favorite, well, I say fruit because it's a fruit, since actually I was a toddler. My mum said I used to like shake when I've seen the tomatoes, and the love of tomatoes stayed with me basically until this time. As we know, the tomatoes we buy in the shops, like, are absolutely atrocious, and they literally taste of nothing. So growing your own, it gives you like totally different tomato experience. It's just to mention, you guys, this video, it's gonna be like something different. It's not sort of it's a bit more vloggy, just chit-chatting, and I'm gonna show you basically the basics, how to plant the tomatoes, and it's kind of applicable to many other things anyway, and just share with you just some basically some basically some tips of how to sort of do this inexpensively as possible. As I said to you, first of all, I've been growing tomatoes for pretty much like for the past 10 years. I've been growing, apart from one gap when I was pregnant and I knew I couldn't attend to them, so this year it didn't happen then, but generally I've been growing them every year. And I've been growing one of my favorite tomatoes called Gigantomo F1, which is basically it is a hybrid seed, but it produces a really large tomatoes. And I've been growing them, and I'm trying to be growing them for competition, because a few years back they were doing a competition for the growers, whoever grows the biggest tomato, and I didn't come anywhere near close. However, the tomatoes were huge, and I put some pictures out somewhere here as you're watching this, and that really got me interested in that plant. And I've saved my own seeds. Brings me down to, as well, before I start, guys, there was many debates going around about how to preserve seeds and how to keep seeds. And yes, of course, guys, if we're talking preserving seeds for really long term for the SHTF situation, yes, they have to be basically kept in a paper bag or vacuum sealed. Many people say frozen, blah blah blah. But as a general, when we collect our seeds, I just put them in a little paper bag, basically like an envelope, and then keep them for next year. Well, I found, right, bear with me, an envelope. And this is, yeah, this is a true gardening, guys. This was that. It was in my cupboard, okay? It's envelope, and it was 2018. And I've there basically saved my own seeds. And they had some Gigantomo seeds. Because I've been growing my own, I've been then selected the seeds from the biggest one to create the bigger and bigger one each year. But because I've missed and I thought I lost them, I had to buy some. And they're not expensive. Not cheap. Sorry, this was £4.49, and you get like 5 seeds. So it's almost £1 a seed. So you can imagine my happiness when I suddenly found a really skanky envelope with my little paper towels with the seeds inside. And again, I thought, it's 5 years, right? 5 years. 2018, we're 23, so it's, say, 5 years, right? And I thought, let's give that a try, because many people say that, like, if you don't store seeds properly, they don't grow, they don't yield. Well, this was like this, shoved in my utility cupboard, and the utility gets really warm because we've got the boiler there. So those seeds been sitting there for 5 years, like at 20-something degrees, like constantly. And I thought, do a test, and guys, there we are. Every one of those seeds has came up. Yes, they don't look particularly like you would expect them to, but the Gigantomo seeds, when they initially come up, they just look a bit scabby. They just don't look like a normal tomato seed. They look a bit deformed. It's really weird, but they do then evolve into a better, basically normal plant later on. So, but that just proven a pudding. That's something that's just been abandoned, sitting there 5 years in warmth, just in an open envelope. I think that's a credit to a tomato seeds. And another myth, when the people say, like, yes, the you have to use heirloom varieties because the hybrids don't produce, are they either sterile or they don't produce the same mother plant. Well, again, in this instance, it was not been the case. I've been doing them year after year, and they have been producing the same mother tomato, and I've been taking the seeds from the hybrid seeds that technically are not meant to produce, and I've been doing it, and it's been working absolutely fine. So it's not the case with every seed. I appreciate some of them probably could be sterile, but in my instance, every seed I ever planted, and you can see every seed I planted that's 5 years old, it came up as a plant. We'll see how they grow. So basically, as my other things have always been growing is, you got the money maker, you got the gardener's delight, and you got the yellow delight, which are cherry tomatoes. Okay, so that's the guys I've been growing, and I've seeded them already in the trays. It's, as I said, guys, it's really straightforward, so I'll show you in a second. And one of the new varieties I'm trialing is the Italian beef tomato. So I've seeded them already. They came up quite nicely. I think actually they are, I know they're yellow giant tomato actually, which I've also grown, and I've put the picture up. Also absolutely giant tomatoes, and it tastes absolutely amazing. Right, so yeah, this is what I've seeded as well. So as the purpose of this video, guys, okay, we're talking about basically how easy it is to plant something. You don't have to literally buy your plastic trays for the garden. I've got loads of plastic trays, little seed trays, because a few years back, before I was pregnant, I was going to start like a mini nursery and sell basically things like locally at the little farmers markets, but pregnancy kind of took the whole idea away. So I still have tons of them, which I use for the outside when I plant stuff out. However, indoors, I have a setup in utility again with the grow light, which I show you a picture somewhere here. Basically where I start my seeds that I need long growing period, like say peppers and chilies, and of course cucumbers and tomatoes. So I use generally is a trays like this. They are from meat, chickens, whatever else you get in it. They're really tough, like really tough. You can just easily like wash them out and use them. You can use the mushroom punnets here, which I use for the peppers. Okay, you can use any container you have, from like grapes, from anything. You can reuse polystyrene cups, which I've got my cucumbers, which I'm trialing in to grow inside. I've started them quite early on because I've read that you can grow cucumbers inside, so I was going to give it a go. And you guys can use like reuse if you got like paper cups in the office. Do you know what I mean? Like we can reuse anything you want. And it literally doesn't have to be expensive. Soil, I've got in this instance a Miracle-Gro all-purpose compost. Home Bargains do any like general compost. I've grown stuff and taken the compost from the grow bags because it's like $1.99 and it's cheap. You don't have to spend the money. And I know many people say like the success is in having the really expensive compost. I disagree. From experience, you can literally go and dig up a piece of your garden soil and start your seed in there and it will grow. It might not have 100% the quickest success rate in terms of coming up and germinating, but things generally grow in the nature. Tomato seed will be like, tomato could be dropped in the middle of your garden there, like you can just bury it in and it will just grow next year. Things are resilient, right? Plants are resilient and they will grow. So don't for one second think, if you don't have the money to go and spend £5 on a bit of compost, don't bother. Just either find a cheap one, mix it with a bit of sand, or just go and dig up some soil in the garden or the forest and you should be okay. Again, some people might disagree, but again, that's my opinion and I speak from experience. So, and with the labels, the next things, guys, you don't have to spend a fortune on buying the labels. I'm using the biodegradable plastic cutlery. You can cut them in, like snap them into two, put the name of what you're growing in there. It works really well, and I found they last better outside than the normal plastic things that you buy with the labels. The plastic ones, I found they get ruined by UV within a season. So by literally end of the season, they're like, you pick them up and they just crumble into nothing. So those things will last for a couple of years easily, and you can just obviously reuse them if you wanted to. You can also cut up a bottle. I'm showing you a cup, but you can cut up a bottle, you can cut up a cup and use the Sharpie to write it on and just put a little piece in there so you know where you're growing. In this instance here, I've written on the trays themselves. So if you're growing something inside, you just write it on the tray. You don't even need to use anything, okay? So without further ado, guys, hopefully I kind of basically covered the basic thing. With the tomatoes, okay, they have two types, determinate and indeterminate. Generally, majority of them are indeterminate, which means they need support and they grow as high as you let them. Indeterminate normally becomes a bush variety. That means they don't need the support, but technically they kind of do. Every tomato will need the support. I've grown the bush variety, and because they get so heavy, especially if you do grow varieties that are quite large, the stems need the support because the weight of the fruit, it's unbearable. So they do need to be supported either way. However, it could be done easily and cheaply, and I will show you this in the summer when we are growing. Right, without further ado, guys, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to put the gloves on. Okay, I know gardening, I normally don't mind gardening, getting dirty hands, but I hate dirty nails and the garden nails. And because we're going out later, I'm going to put the gloves on. Right, I am going to seed the gigantomos. And, right, first of all, another thing, guys. There are numerous amount of people that grow tomatoes to different calendars or to their specific times. I always planted tomatoes in February because tomatoes need a really long growing season before you get blight. You will know once you lived in an area if you grow tomatoes. Blight is basically it's spores of mold basically that started growing on tomatoes, and it basically eats the tomato plant, and tomato starts with the tomato stem and then spreads into the fruit. So it basically it starts rotting away. So, and it's kind of contagious. So once it starts, it will transport to all your other tomato plants, and it happens pretty much every year at the same time, unless you buy blight-resistant variety, which I haven't tried already. So this is where the important part of is the tomatoes need that long period of time of growing and sunshine, and it all needs to finish before the blight hits, because once it starts, that's the end. So, all right. So I normally do mine in multiples of stages. As you can see, I've got some that have done quite nicely already. They're a little bit leggy, but it's not a problem with the tomatoes. Leggy means that they are quite tall. They should be a little bit there, a little bit lower because of the light conditions. Even with the grow light, you do get a little bit of an issues. And you have some that I've done a couple of weeks back. They're not ready to transplant anyway. Anyway, guys, let's plant. Let's do. I've got a couple of cups in there because we only have a few seeds. Let's get some soil in. It's a dirty job, but somebody's gonna do it. I'm only using the cups because, as I said, because there only are few of the tomato seeds in there, and basically by putting stuff directly into little cups, it stops you having to transplant. So when you plant them in the, say like I've got the peppers in there in the mushroom tray, you let them grow on, and then you have to pick them out and plant them on, which is fine. But as you can see, so in this one I've got like 40 tomato plants, so will have to go somewhere. And if I suddenly had 50 of those standing around, it kind of not always good. You don't always have the space. So it buys you a little bit more time for the weather to warm up outside to put this in the greenhouse. And I'm doing this again now, the tomatoes, because if for some reason, and you do lose tomatoes, like with any seed, you lose them, or even though they came up, anything can happen, especially when they go outside. You can harden them off with the cold weather, you might lose half of them. Do you know what I mean? It literally all depends. So it's always wise to have more than you require. Because at the end of the day, you can then sell them on locally. And people do. People charged, like last year, people were charging a fortune. People were charging like £1 a tomato plant. Do you know what I mean? And we didn't have any shortages then. So tomatoes is a big business. You can never have enough. You can never have enough. Right, so hopefully guys you can kind of see. Right, so normally seeds come in a paper bag and then into a little foil 4 mile bag. So that should says 5 seeds. Let's see. Right, okay. Come on, Tommies. 3, I can see 3, 4. Oh, I think there's 6. They get stuck to the packet. Oh, there's more. I think there's more. My goodness, look at that. Yeah, it says average content is 5 seeds. I'm like, okay, that's quite silly. So we have, they're so fiddly, and especially with the gloves. Sorry. Right, here they are, look. Got 11 or 12 there, look. Here they are. Okay. So what I'm going to do then, I'm going to put 2 in each then. This is more than anticipated. And the idea is, guys, okay, I'm just going to wet the soil a little bit. The idea is with any seed, okay, you plant the depth of a seed, because some seeds are really tiny and you couldn't possibly bury them really deeply because it just ends up rotting. So let's get a bit of water in. I should have watered that before. Okay, so just wait for the water to sip in. That's the beauty as well, actually, with the clear cups. You get to see whether they're dry or not. One thing, right, it's everybody will always tell you it's really important to have a drainage holes underneath. For love of me, I never put a drainage holes in my trays. I just never do. I think I've been doing it for such a kind of long time. You water it, you know when it needs watering, and it's generally, I don't know, I never had an issue anyway. Anyway, so all we're doing now, just putting in a couple of little seeds in there. Okay, let me do one in front of the camera there for you. Let's put 1, 2, 3. I'm sorry if it's like teaching you to suck eggs really, but it's just something I needed to do anyway because I wanted to plant it. So, and I know some of you asked for a little bit of gardening video, so here we are. Gardening video in the kitchen, eh? I will film outside, I promise. When the weather picks up. It's been raining in Wales for like forever. Come on, seed, get out. Oh yeah, it's gone in there. Right, 2, and I've got 3 left, I think. Right, I think that's it. Okay, so what we're going to do now is just to put, I only use 4 cups. Duh. Special. Literally, we put a tiny bit on top. A little bit of soil. Okay, and basically, if you got a lot of tomatoes, like for example, I've got here, and this is not all of them, rather than basically writing out like hundreds and hundreds of labels with a tomato, I used to have like, not a spreadsheet, but basically like a notepad. And for example, the Gigantama tomatoes will have number 1. So I put this in a book so I know, and I write it on a pot or on, say, on a knife. There says number 1. And I will know the number 1 is Gigantama. So when I come to plant them out, I basically know which ones are which. So generally I just put it in there. Happy days. And give it a little bit of sprinkle of water on the top. I know we don't need a lot because we just watered it. And then it basically goes in the warm place. Hold on. Here we go. Right. And yeah, and it just goes in a warm place to basically sprout. At the average temperature, say if you got 18 degrees a house, it probably will take about, I don't know, 4 or 5 days for them to start to come up. And then I'm pretty sure this was seeded about a week ago. This is what you'll get in the week. Those guys are not ready to be transplanted as yet. Let me tell you why. Let me just put those in there. So, yeah, those are the ones being done. Pretty sure a week or 2 weeks, I really can't remember. But here we are. You can see they are just got their first leaves, which is a normal basic leaf when the things come up. And now when we're looking at those tomatoes, they've got the true leaf. Do you see that? Oh, sorry. Yeah, so the true leaf is the first true leaf. It's basically the original leaf that actually looks like a leaf as a tomato leaf as you know it. Any plant, like any chili plant, any of the plants come up, have a primitive first leaf, which is basically just a round leafy type thing. So these ones are chilies, and you can see they have the leaves, the true leaves here, and the basic leaves there, and like I showed you with the tomatoes there. So as soon as a plant, i.e. say tomato plant, has a first true leaf, it's time to get him potted on. So And I'm going to show you that as well. Whilst I'm here, we're talking about tomatoes, and I have a free spare pot. Right, so this is what we call a leggy tomato. It is just a tiny bit taller than really needed to be for my liking. I have mini, those things are absolutely great. If you like fingers and thumbs when you're trying to do something, and the seedlings are they're ever so gentle. Mini spade, it works wonders. So let's get, so those ones are yellow giant tomatoes. They were my own seeds. Again, I'm pretty sure they're from the 2018 range as well. Amazing. So I'm going to dig one out. Right, I will pick one up. And you will, again, there are chances, guys, that sometimes you will damage the roots when you transplant. Again, that's very important then to have multiples of tomatoes. So, right, okay. Let me just show you that one on the camera. So I've just dug one out. And that's what we have. Okay. Hopefully you can get, it's difficult to show you. Anyway, when you do handle any sort of plants, young seedlings, trying to handle them and lift them by their little leaves, not by the stem, because it can basically break. So let me get this out of the way. So what I've done, basically made a hole. And the idea is, guys, we bury this tomato deeper than initial root. And what happens with the tomato, and this is the beauty of the tomato, not many plants do this, when you bury this lower, the residual bit of a stem will grow roots as well, which will make the tomato stronger. So basically that means you don't have to worry. So I'm making a mess here, but that's fine. So here we go. There's a little chap. You can put this literally, you can put it as deep as all the way up to here if you chose, if you really wanted to. But this is kind of really the height, an average height of the tomato should be when it came up after that long of a time. Run out of water now, so give it a good water. Anyway, so basically this is how we fix the leggy tomatoes. So as you can see, I've got my work cut out. I've got a lot of them to do. So I've got that, and I've got a few other trays back in the utility. But this is what we have, and that will solve the problem. You can do this with the cucumbers as well, and I don't think you can do this with peppers. I never tried, but peppers don't seem to suffer with the legginess so much from there anyway. So, but here we are. I think, guys, hopefully I've covered the basics for you. As I said, it doesn't have to be expensive. You can start with pretty much anything. Any container will absolutely fine. If you seed stuff, like I said, in those little trays, if you want to speed up the process, you can put a little bit of cling film over the top, but do keep an eye on it. If it's started to come up, you have to take it off, because too moisture, you will literally rot the plant or rot the seed. So kind of, there's a happy medium between humidity and too much humidity anyway. So, and basically, yeah, I'm just going to continue to do what I got to do. And hopefully, guys, you have found it a little bit helpful. If you do have any questions, I said by far, I'm not an expert, but I think I've grown tomatoes long enough and eaten different and grown different varieties to kind of understand and hopefully help you if you're on your journey of starting growing a tomato. So if you do have questions, please comment below, and I'm trying to answer any of the questions. And well, hopefully you enjoyed this video, or at least found something helpful, or hopefully maybe get some inspiration to start growing your own tomatoes. So well, thank you for watching, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye bye.